ngoa. Samani sana jamani. Tulikuwa tunaimba wimbo hapa nikiuliza kama mtu anaweza ngoa kaka kitu kana kuanga hapa. But anyway, welcome back. We are now on the Daily Nation and also the Standard, just to have a look at what is happening in the daily papers. And you know, it's quite unfortunate how most of the time when we look at the papers, negative news just are everywhere. But let's just have a look at what is happening. And the very first page of the Daily Nation, I see here Azimio in fresh push against high taxes and cost of living. And during a summit shared by Raila Odinga, the opposition coalition resolves to explore other measures besides court action to press the government to address grievances like rising taxes, weakening shilling, and confusion in the education sector. And this is a story we can find on page 8. Also on the top page, I see how Ruto broke housing pledge, shifting goalpost in its manifesto. The ruling coalition did not directly signal a levy deducted from workers' salaries to finance housing projects, and also propose a modest contribution capped at 3,000 per household each month to fund healthcare. But the state has now imposed monthly punitive levies of 1.5 and 2.7% on gross earning that have sparked public uproar. And in other news, the counties Nyeri and Kiambu farmers reap big from 2.9 billion fund. The regions are the biggest beneficiaries of the first tranche of the 4 billion shillings Coffee Cherry Advance Revolving Fund. Also, man who fled U.S. after woman's murder arrested. U.S. officials confirm the arrest in Nairobi of the Kenyan man who had been on the run since last November after the woman's death. A story that we will be looking at on page 3. When we cross over to the page 2, I see 3 elder students found murdered and body dumped on road. This is quite unfortunate. They say that detectives in Nakuru are recreating the last moments of Derek Mulamasa Sabuni, a third-year nursing student at Kabarak University, whose body was found with stab wounds near Kampia Motor Trading Center on the Nakuru-Mogoshio Road. And a team of senior detectives visited the scene yesterday and collected evidence for forensic analysis. And 3 Form 4 students who are said to be the last that was seen with him, the deceased that is, have been arrested. And this definitely has sent a lot of shockwaves in that university. And moving on, I see officials give views on affordable housing bill. I see DPP calls for prosecution of 7 officers implicated in torture. Internal Affairs Unit ordered to ensure that the 7 officers are arrested and also charged. I see 7 Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI officers are facing prosecution for allegedly torturing a suspect. And when we move on, I see man who fled to Kenya after killing his girlfriend arrested, U.S. confirms. And the police source says that we have a man we believe is a suspect who is wanted in the U.S. for murder. We are waiting for further profiling to know the way forward. Kanyede, who had an Interpol red notice on his head, was arrested at a club and is being held at Gigiri police station. That is on page 3. And page 4, inside Kenya Kwanza scheme to tame judiciary amid tug of war, government could use recomposition of JSC to have greater say in decisions made by expert court. And Kiambu Senator Karungo Thangwa says that, I believe these proposed amendments are crucial for establishing a more efficient, accessible and accountable judicial system. And when we cross over to the page 5, I see CJ talks don't mean giving up autonomy. Officials reveal that up to 60% of judicial officers' training budget funded by development partners. I see here CJ Martha Koome saying that even as we open ourselves to dialogue, one thing we will not open ourselves to is our decision-making process. So Chief Justice, that is Martha Koome, has said that dialogue with the executive led by President William Ruto does not mean the judiciary will give up its independence. A story that you can find on page 5. And moving on, I see KK manifesto on housing, healthcare, silent on hefty levies. The ruling coalition gave an impression that it would not raid workers' payslips, but would instead explore other means to mobilize resources. And I see here that questions are being asked whether President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza administration is going back on its words to voters by imposing punitive levies to finance housing, and healthcare projects. This is an APRO that is taking place, and of course we have been having it since Ruto was sworn in as president, and everything that has been going on, it's about the levies, about the taxes. This is a story you can find on 6 and 7, that is on the Daily Nation. 1.5 is the percentage the government has been deducting monthly from Kenyans in formal employment since July 2023 for the affordable housing project. And ICPAK Chairman Philip Kakai says that Parliament should set aside funds for the housing project. Funding should not be through payroll, as employees are already paying pay year. That is the pay as you earn fund. Quite an uproar right there, because the argument is that can't we find other ways of making money for the government? Can't we find other ways of ensuring that money is provided for these levies other than taxing the Kenyans and taxing them, and that is also in addition to the payee, the amount that we are also paying. But as we say, God will always provide, because according to his riches in glory, we can always trust God. Some of these things we can complain about them, we can argue about them, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't change, if nothing changes at the end of it all, we have to now turn to God and believe in his ability to provide for us, even when things are chaotic, and to also learn to do budgeting in a better way, to learn how to also practice contentment. All these are things that people don't want to hear, but I believe is what we need as a country. If we cannot change the situation, we have tried to talk and talk and talk and nothing is changing, then maybe what we need to do is to draw back and ask ourselves, how do I budget better? How do I make sure that the money that I'm getting is serving the things? How do I reduce my expenses? How do I live within my means and continue and trust that at the end of it all, things are going to work for the good? We can only be patient and keep praying. And on page 8, I see Raila's new strategy to counter Ruto. Opposition leader reveals measures meant to force president to drop punitive taxes slapped on Kenyans. Now, we can only wait and see how this turns out. Joint statement says Azimio remains extremely disturbed by the worsening cost of living, the ever-rising and reckless taxes. Moving on, I see Ministry renews push to eliminate neglected diseases. Health CS calls for concerted efforts by stakeholders to eliminate diseases. And at a glance, what are neglected tropical diseases? Maybe you might be asking. Neglected tropical diseases affect millions of people worldwide, particularly on impoverished and marginalized communities. They are often overlooked and underfunded, leading to significant health, social, and economic burdens. And some of these diseases include guinea worm, sleeping sickness, leishmaniasis, rabies, and also trachoma. And now moving on to the next page, I see Nyeri Kiambu gets lion's share of 2.9 billion coffee sherry fund. I see first tranche of the 4 billion fund approved by cabinet to benefit 221,382 farmers from 24 counties. This is very good news. 65,252 farmers from Nyeri are the number who received the cash from the fund. Data from the new Kenya Planters Cooperative Union shows beautiful, and I see Nelson Wanjohi, who is having a smile on his face, standing to his coffee bushes in Ishamara village that is in Nyeri County. And of course, finally, we have Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda most hit by hackers in 2022. We have had a lot of cases of, hacking online. And NIS says the rise in cybercrime has compounded the security challenges facing governments. The battlefields of our time are becoming increasingly virtual. Our reliance on digital infrastructure creates new vulnerabilities. And that is the NIS Director General Norden Haji. And the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kindiki Kithure also said that a multi-agency approach in battling organized crime and violent extremism had borne fruit in Kenya and invited other nations to emulate this method. This is an article you can find on page 14. And when now we cross over to the back page, I see more opposition to judiciary services at Huduma centers. Rift Valley LSK members say the move flies in the face of separation of powers principle. The Huduma centers are controlled by the executive, and it will interfere with the principle of separation of powers. And lastly, I see here Angolan Federation bans direct contact with players to avoid distraction, quote unquote. Various business entities offer achieving Palancas Negras millions of shillings in reward after brilliant display. So, Angolan Football Federation statement is that, therefore, in order to avoid noise in the locker room and consequent distraction of the working group, especially the players, promises of offers should henceforth be made institutionally through the FAF's communication, marketing, commercial, and image department. So, all right, let us now take a look at the standard that is on the Daily Nation. And the standard, what is on the very top page, I see shock blunder that could set criminals free. I see court revelation, more than 10,000 people charged with robbery in Kenyan courts since July 2018, and another 2,000 robbery convicts could soon be back on our streets following what a rights lobby says is a fatal blunder that has seen authorities continue arresting, charging and convicting suspects using a law declared unconstitutional in 2016. This as rapists and murderers seek to pay cash bail for offenses. All right, and this is a story very well detailed that you can find on the standard. And I see here how high taxes eroded Kenya's spending power. That is on page 2. Pakistan Khan given 10-year jail. Oh, Pakistan's Khan, all right. We see running at 50 to build classrooms. That is on the sports page. Quite a good initiative right there on page 30. Top Cop playing hide and seek with the courts as well. That is the War Memorial Hospital management failed to reclaim it from the Nakuru County government for the third time yesterday after county boss Samuel Ndanye failed to enforce the third court order. And on page 2, I see this is quite a really interesting layout, because it's just what we have mentioned on when we were talking about the taxes and how inabidi tu watu tumepunguza mahitaji yetu. I see Kenyans spend less and borrow more as value of 1,000 shilling drops. Unfortunately, we have people now borrowing more. And I see here Kenyan spending habit in the last quarter 2023. 1.5% is the overall consumer spending, which drops by 1.5%. 3% individual spending reduced by 3%. Low income earners record a significant 9% drop in spending. Change in income levels between 2022 and 2023. First of all, we have seen 37%. There've been no change in income. 38%, there's a decline in income, and 24% a rise in income. So business changes in sales also is well elaborated. Consumer views on their spending also. 44% had a positive mindset, 56% had a negative mindset. You can check that out. Quite an interesting article on how the spending habits and also borrowing habits of Kenyans have changed between 2022 and 2023. And when we go over to the 4th page, I see guards will soon have power to arrest suspects. Okay, interesting. Private Security General Regulations 2024 has been introduced before House team. Guard may also conduct a body search, bag search, or vehicle search without a warrant. Okay, interesting. I see here Raymond Omolo, Interior PA, says the private security guards will draw the right to arrest people from the Constitution, just as it guarantees that any Kenyan can arrest an offender and hand them over to the police. Quite interesting, just to make sure that we are tightening those bolts, and especially with what has been happening in the Airbnbs and whatnot. So the guards now have the power to actually arrest. They can frisk even without a search warrant. That's a story you can find on page 4. And when we cross over to the page 7, I see AG's era may free 12,000 suspect convicts in 2016. Court declared sections of law on robbery with violence as unconstitutional. And I see here right lobby goes to court accusing the AG of failure to amend law or appeal decision. All right. And lastly, I see court told how suspected serial killer confessed. That is the serial killer Evans Wanjala. You can look at that story on page 9. And apparently the High Court in Eldoret has been told how suspected serial killer Evans Wanjala confessed to killing 5 girls. Very unfortunate. And when we go over to the back page, to the sports page, we see here Fire not carried away by Ivorians' triumph over Teranga Lions. Elephants trample on Senegal's Teranga Lions to reach quarterfinals in Nations Cup. Of course, my team is Senegal, Teranga Lions, and Gigi, who will be joining us soon, actually, probably tomorrow. Yeye ni wa Indomitable Lions. So we are still going on that line. Ivorians were staring at elimination after they were thrashed 4-0 by Equatorial Guinea in group stage. A story that you can find on the very last page of the Standard. Remember, AFCON is still going on. That is in Cote d'Ivoire, so you can definitely get that news and get to be informed about your team and whoever is your favorite, so that you can get informed about what is happening in the AFCON. And maybe lastly, for just a minute, I can look at the Business Daily. I see public officers loot 605 million in corrupt deals, PSC report, and Commission says another 22.7 million stolen was recovered. Most theft reported in state farms and agencies as well. You can have a look at that story that is on the Business Daily. So that's it for the Nation, for the Standard, and also the Business Daily. Right about now, I'm going to be taking a short break, even as we have a look at the video of the day. But you can keep in tune on Hope FM. We have at the top of every hour, we have news updates. When we cross over to Hope TV at 7 p.m., we'll be having Dira, and of course, News Watch at 9 p.m. Please don't go far.